Hi everyone, it's me, Sandy Cruz of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For years now, I've been bringing to you conversations about wellness from experts from all over the world. Whether it be suggestions in how you can age better, biohacking, alternative wellness, these are conversations to help you live your best life. I want to live a long, healthy, and vibrant life. Never mind all those stigmas that as we reach midlife and beyond, we're just going to shrivel up and die with some horrible disease. Always remember, balanced living works. I really look forward to this season. Hi everyone, welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have Hale Dwoskin, and we are going to talk all about the Sedona Method. And a lot of people don't know a lot about this. And I'm going to give you a little clue. It's kind of like The Secret. Remember The Secret? I can't remember when that book came out, but manifestation and all of that, except this goes deeper. And I'm going to tell you guys now to not dismiss this method and go, oh God, this is BS. It's just about manifestation, because it's really not. I'm going to leave the interview to explain all of it to you. But really, the Sedona Method is a great way to make positive changes in your life. And I'll tell you how I stumbled upon it. I saw something about an author who was talking about how manifestation is basically BS because something like, I think it's like 80 or 90% of our thoughts are actually coming from our subconscious. So, they say you have to have an alignment in order for your manifestations to come true. Well, how can you be aligned if the majority of your subconscious, you don't even know what's there, right? So I stumbled upon this other author who kind of copied, but did give credit to the Sedona Method and said, you need to embody all parts of your thoughts in order to have true alignment, in order to actually manifest the things that you want to manifest. It all made a lot of sense to me. And it worked for me because when my dog died last summer, I kind of went to a darker place. It was really, really hard for me and my family. It was not easy. And I've talked about this many times, especially on Instagram. So definitely go follow me on Instagram at Sandy K Nutrition. I have a private Facebook group, Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen Podcast. I also have a Facebook page, Sandy K Nutrition. Go follow me on TikTok. That seems to be a place where I'm popular. I don't know what's going on there, but Sandy K Nutrition. I also have a YouTube channel where I post lots of different content, full interviews with my guests. A lot of times people like to see the guests and you'd like to see the conversation. So go follow me on YouTube as well. I'm also on Pinterest. Definitely check it out anywhere. Sandy K Nutrition, anywhere and everywhere. Now back to what I was talking about. After my dog died, I went through, I'm going to say, a catabolic state. And I do believe that when we are going through life, if we are always building, that is anabolic, we never really crack open and get to, that breakdown stage. And, I think that can result in problems. I think, you go through life, you're in your 20s, you're building your career, then you build a family and you're building, and then you, let's say you want to work out and you're building. But in order to build better, stronger, a better foundation, sometimes you need to break down right? And I came to this realization that last year after my dog died, I had to break down and break open in order to rebuild again. And I found it really interesting how while I was building my business, guess what else was happening? Weight was just piling on, piling, building. Anyway, it's my whole theory on anabolic versus catabolic. And I went through a breaking open and breaking down and then a rebuilding. And the Sedona Method helped me with that breakdown to rebuild better and stronger. So, with that, I hope you enjoy this interview. Please definitely follow me everywhere on my channels. If you have a moment, please take the time to rate, review my podcast with a few kind words. It really, really helps others to find me. I'm also now on SiriusXM, and share this episode with someone else who might benefit. Have a good one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. His name is Hale Dwoskin. I hope I pronounced it right.
It's close enough.
It's close enough. Okay, good. And Hale has dedicated more than 4 decades to teaching and sharing the Sedona Method, which can help people realize their goals, alleviate their suffering, and discover the truth of who they are. He is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Sedona Method, co-author of Happiness is Free and It's Easier Than You Think by Lester Levinson. Hale is also one of the featured teachers in the book and movie phenomenon, The Secret, as well as a featured teacher in The Greatest Secret, both by Rhonda Byrne, and he's also featured in the movie Letting Go. So I actually have a little bit of backstory that I'm going to tell before I introduce Hale officially. I have been really on my own journey, and I took such a deep dive into this book and found it so powerful that I absolutely had to record with Hale. So that's my own little backstory on why we're here today. And I'm just so honored to have you here, and welcome, Hale.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm really happy to have you here, only because I feel like this is a book, especially post-COVID, that a lot of people would really find useful. It's like we're kind of all trying to find ourselves right now, and it really helped me. So maybe tell us your backstory. I mean, you've done so much, Hale.
Well, I was a seeker at it from a very young age, and back in 1976, I met Lester Levinson, who was the man who inspired this work, at a seminar I organized for Lenador. And I didn't really notice Lester in the seminar, but I was fortunate enough to go out to lunch with him and Leonard and the other organizer. And it wasn't really so much what he said, but it was this sense of peace and stillness and love, and it was really hard to describe. And all he really said about the Sedona Method is that it's, which at the time I believe was called mind freedom, is that you sit around the table and release. And I had no idea what that meant. This is 1976. Most people thought releasing was beating pillows. But I thought if it could give me even just a little bit of what he was an obvious living embodiment of, I was on board. So signed up. The next weekend was the first weekend of a 2-weekend seminar, and before the first weekend even ended, there was this deep knowingness that this is what I was going to be dedicating my life to. And I've never wavered. It's now, what is it, to 2023.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can even just leave it at that, not do the math.
It's still going strong. And what I discovered is what he was talking about, is that we have no limitations whatsoever except the ones that we buy into, and that everyone has this natural ability to let go of stress and tension and anxiety and confusion and self-doubt and all the mental noise and inner conflict and turmoil that appears to rob us from being and doing what we choose and feeling the way we'd like to feel. And what I've watched with hundreds of thousands of other people is that when you get in touch with this natural ability, you can't lose it again, because it's something natural. We naturally let go. If you've ever been around, well, you have children, so I'm sure you've seen this, and maybe a lot of your audience has been around young children too, but have you ever seen a young child fall down and then look around to see if they need to be upset?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And then if they catch your eye or they catch an adult's eye, they immediately manufacture an upset to get some love and attention.
Yeah.
But if no one sees them, they just get up as though nothing happened.
That's so true.
Because young children just naturally let go. They don't have to work at it. But as we mature into adulthood, because we're trying to mimic and be like the adults who are suppressing all the time and avoiding their emotions and denying their emotions and are just basically are not letting them go much of the time, we then model ourselves after them. And eventually most of us forget that we have this natural ability to do it. And most of us still do it. When our back is against the wall, or when we hear something really funny and we laugh. Laughter is one of nature's ways of allowing us to simply let go. But once you get in touch with this as an adult, it tends to not only stick with you, but it gets easier and easier to do again, until relatively quickly you still have the wisdom of an adult, but you have more of that childlike innocence in life, and just like a young child, you can let go. And it's an incredibly useful skill. Incredibly useful.
I do believe it is incredibly useful, but it's also not easy. I mean, I think this is why books like yours are needed, because unless you're guided, it's not that easy to, okay, let's describe what the word imperturbability is. Because I think that's a great way to start. What do you think? Because because imperturbability is something we'd all love, right? Okay, all you brilliant biohackers and health conscious people out there, I'm going to talk to you about a product that you've probably heard about, but maybe don't know enough about. Colloidal silver. And this is colloidal silver from Silver Biotics. While Silver Biotics has many different products made with colloidal silver, today I'm going to talk to you about their immune support. Let me tell you why Silver Biotics is different. Some companies will state that they are colloidal silver, while they are ionic solutions with small amounts of colloidal silver. Silver Biotics uses electron microscopy in the process of producing their silver to check the structure and composition of the silver. Because of this process, this actually shows that they are a true 100% colloidal silver. Silver Biotics Immune Support provides daily support for your immune system to perform optimally no matter where life takes you. It is a powerful yet gentle supplement that can be added to any diet and lifestyle plan. I personally think this is great just because I'm not a big fan of boosting the immune system. We want to support it, and this is a perfect way to do that. Now, how does Silver Biotics Immune Support do this? It works by using multiple modes of action to keep your cells healthy. It's made with tiny silver particles that have a positive ionic charge, meaning they naturally attract and attach to pathogens. Silver Biotics Miracle Particle not only promotes a strong immune system, but it also promotes a healthy gut and does not harm probiotic bacteria. I have 30% off for you to go and try this yourself right now. Go to silverbiotics.com and use my code SandyK30 for 30% off.
Sure. So the word imperturbability is just pointing to that emotions arise, life happens, but the disturbance is that which we truly are is really actually already imperturbable. But because we've identified as a person, we've identified as a particular story, we've identified with our emotions, we think we're getting disturbed all the time, and then we're struggling to find equanimity again. And it's never seems to be quite right. But as you let go and as you recognize what truly is, that natural imperturbability is just rediscovered because it's already here. It's already what's natural. The thing about the Sedona Method is it's designed to help you recognize what's natural. It points to what's natural, as opposed to trying to convince you to think a particular way, feel a particular way, perceive in a particular way. None of that's required. It's just what's natural.
So peace of mind is something that a lot of people struggle with.
Sure.
And, I guess we should maybe get into some of the ways in which the Sedona Method can help you achieve this, because it's not about this whole toxic positivity, right?
Right.
You know how everyone's
what
like,
do you mean by toxic positivity?
okay, so that's like a big thing now. I don't know how much time you spend on Instagram, Hale, but
0.
Okay, there you go. So toxic positivity is pretending everything is okay. Everything's beautiful. I'm so positive. Look at me. I'm so happy. Meanwhile, I'm suppressing, stuffing. So let's talk about the difference between being truly happy and suppression.
Well, there's several ways to discern the difference, which I think is what you're asking.
Yeah.
When you're pretending to be happy, it's a full-time job. You have to effort at it. You have to make sure that smile stays there. You need to avoid anything that's going to potentially make you feel any way besides the way you'd like to feel. You can't really live life fully because you're living life, through this filter of how it's supposed to be. You're pretending that life is beautiful, even if your bank account is empty, even if your relationships are failing, even if you have a health challenge. Now, at the same time, you can be in that same situation and not be crushed by it or not even be disturbed by it. But that's very different. What happens as you let go is there's this effortless positivity that doesn't have to be faked, doesn't have to be acted out. It doesn't have to, it's dealing with life as it is, but it's spontaneous, it's natural. It's, again, more like how children deal with life. And because it's natural, it doesn't have any downside. Whereas if you're pretending to be okay, it's very fragile. It can easily be disturbed. If you challenge someone who's pretending to be okay, they can snap.
Yes.
And they'll start yelling and screaming at you.
Yes.
If you challenge something at someone who thinks they're okay, something could drop out that and all of a sudden they're just bawling and they don't even know why.
Yeah.
So this is not about pretense. So if it requires maintenance, requires effort, then it's not natural. And the other thing is, at the same time, there's nothing wrong with feeling positively. That feeling is natural. And when feeling is unobstructed, what tends to happen is the mind quiets. The remaining thoughts tend to be more and more positive. But you don't have to one of the things I've noticed about people trying to think positively in an effortful way is they have to constantly judge themselves and censor themselves and go, no, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to let them see how I feel. I've got to, keep that front together. And so you're constantly trying to fool everyone else, including yourself. And it doesn't work. You can't fool yourself. You know when it's a pretense. And there's no pretending required to simply be.
So is this a little bit about just being in the present moment? But what if the present moment is horrible? What if, and I'll give you a scenario. When my daughter was 5, she was diagnosed with cancer. When I got off that phone with the physician, I broke down. And
Which is natural.
Right. But, if I was to, let's say, put myself in the mind of a child, right? So, my son, who was older at the time, he's like, Mommy, did she have cancer? And he asked it so matter-of-factly because he didn't have the connotation to what cancer meant. So, I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening would have some sort of a crisis, whether it's health, whether it's, they lost their home or the death of somebody very close. So how do we bring that into this?
Well, I'm going to ask that because life naturally has what appear to be ups and downs in it. From a personal perspective, there's always some crisis somewhere. It's either a crisis happening in the world, which we've been very good at manufacturing lately, a crisis happening with our money, a crisis happening in our family, a crisis happening in our city or state or country, a crisis that most people, life is crisis management.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the perspective of that which we truly are, there is this calm, open center that responds appropriately to whatever's happening. So there may be an upset, of course, if you hear that. But then if you want to, you can let it go and it passes. And then what's happening is you're taking action. You're doing whatever's required to support the situation, to take care of yourself, which is important. A lot of people forget that part, and to take care of everybody else. That's what's natural. What isn't natural is to, even though it does happen, is to get so lost in whatever's happening, and so it becomes your whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else disappears. And it's not a very good meditation.
No.
Meditating on crisis just causes more stress, more tension, more anxiety, more confusion, more contraction, more illness. Yet just being, first off, doesn't require anything. It's what's natural. And letting go doesn't require anything because that's natural too. Again, young children do this naturally.
Yeah, they do.
We still do this naturally too. It's just that we're behind, most of us, because we're so identified with our stories and our struggles and our crises. We don't notice it. But where are all the thoughts and feelings you had yesterday? Except for the recurring themes, they're not here.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is most of this disappears by itself. But when we start thinking it's a terrible crisis, we keep revisiting it, and we keep revisiting it, and we keep revisiting it. And it makes it seem like that's the only reality. That's the truth. And sometimes when there's an extreme challenge, it can become an extremely fabulous opening to see things from a new perspective. And it is also a way for you to just simply recognize that life is just happening. It's not happening to you personally. But when you're in crisis mode, it feels 100% personal.
Yeah.
And as that sense of it's personal disappears, then there's just life. And life, even when dealing with crisis, is limitless, is boundless, and is ever new. And so it allows for a very different way of living. One where you still handle all responsibilities are still naturally handled. You're naturally a better parent, a better wife or husband. Everything seems to flow. There's just more of a sense of harmony and peace and naturalness. The less there's a sense of that separate individual who has to always be doing something about it. And also, if feelings arise, or when they arise, you learn that you don't have to just push it back down, or you don't have to express it and throw it at someone. You can just let it go. And you do. The more you release, the more you let go, the more it becomes your natural response to crisis as it's happening. I've experienced being in a car, skidding out of control, and instead of panicking, just there's just this flow. I do the right thing. I'm back on the road. There's a little after feeling, and then it's gone, and then I'm just driving again, or there's just driving happening again. So and I've experienced being in the hospital, and hearing that this body might not survive, and being at peace. And that was a long time ago. I obviously, the body obviously survived.
Yeah, you're here right now, so.
And so it's a very different way of living life. It's a much more natural way to live life. And it's not that there wasn't still challenges. It took me a while to recover from the illness. But there wasn't this overlay of dis-ease. When the worst part about any illness for the person who's having it, or if there's someone you care about who's having it, is all the thoughts and the feelings that they're almost like torture. What does this mean? Am I going to be able to fix it? What does it mean about their life or my life? Is there something I should be doing that I'm not doing? And if I don't do it, are they going to die? Am I going to die? And on and on. And that is often much worse than what's actually happening. What's actually happening is something that just is going to be dealt with.
I had an epiphany listening to what you were saying. And you know how you were saying crisis over crisis over crisis.
Yes.
And so when my daughter was diagnosed with this type of cancer, I call it the snowball effect.
Yes.
Okay. So exactly 1 year after I had thyroid cancer, exactly 1 year after my husband coded in the hospital. So 3 years of this. And guess what I did? When everything initially began, I stayed there. I stayed in that crisis. I lived, breathed, I slept, everything, the crisis. And maybe this is where we can kind of get into a discussion on how that, I guess, I don't know, like you can call it victim consciousness, you can call it a bunch of different things, but staying there is what really can bring in more of that. Does that make sense, Hale?
Yeah, well, yes and no.
Okay.
So let me explain what I mean.
Yeah.
First off, hearing something like that for everyone who's listening to this can make people feel like they need to deny it or avoid it or get away from it. And that's not what you're saying.
No.
But I think what you were trying to say is that it felt devastating and you felt lost in it,
Yes.
victimized by it.
Yes.
And that's a natural response if you feel like you're Sandy and it's Sandy's child who's sick, or it's Sandy's husband, or it's Sandy's body. You can get so lost in it that it can feel overwhelming. Yet at the same time, it's not something to blame yourself for. You're not wrong if you're lost in it. But if you recognize you've gotten lost in it, then already there's Sandy, and there's a recognition that it can't be just Sandy, because I'm recognizing that she is lost in that. She's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's space to start to see that there's more to life than just this particular crisis. And then you can choose to do tools like the Sedona Method.
Yes.
You can choose to take care of yourself, like, take breaks and just take care of Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to just, despite the situation, eat things that you like. Have a hot bath, go for a walk, exercise, all the things that help us feel better. And on one level, it's not that you're choosing it, it happens. But what happens is, as you let go, you'll find that there's this natural righting of what appears to be wrong. The situation may not change, but how you're responding to it can change radically. So if you hadn't gotten lost in it, that doesn't mean that those two other events wouldn't have followed.
Mm-hmm.
Events happen or don't. But the way we experience them can be radically different than the way we often experience them. And so I caution against people who think, I need to not get into victim consciousness, for instance.
Okay.
If they're trying not to be in victim consciousness, they're already in it. They're already struggling with it. But if they notice there's victim consciousness and they just simply let go and know that it's going to keep coming and going until it's gone, till there is no victim consciousness, then what happens? Then life is just naturally happening, and we're dealing with life, and we're releasing or letting go of the limitations, and then it's not as traumatic at first, and then it can get to the point where even when there's crisis happening, there's just this sense of it's just being handled. And you feel less and less that it's up to you. That we also feel very isolated. When we feel like we're the victim and this life is happening to us, then we feel totally alone. Like if we don't fix it, if we don't solve it, if we don't do something about it, and at the same time we have no idea what that is or what it's supposed to look like, then it's just going to get worse. But the more you let go, the less alone you feel. Because they recognize that there is just one energy or one beingness that all is, including what appears to be a crisis. And that changes the nature of how it lands.
What is the difference between the Sedona Method and manifestation? I know they're different things, but some people, who have read The Secret, who, right now in the world of social media, manifestation is huge. And
Yes.
the way that sometimes it's portrayed is like, oh, you just write it down on a piece of paper and say a little prayer, make a little wish, and then burn it or bury it in the soil, and poof, all your dreams are going to come true. So let's break that down a little bit. I would love to hear what you think about all of this.
So, I'm friends with Rhonda. Yeah, so I have to be careful how I describe this.
Yes, of course. But I know it's not that simple, right?
I was in the movie The Secret.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick side story.
Okay.
The movie The Secret was filmed at an organization that I used to be an active member of. I'm still an honorary member of it, and one of the founders, but I no longer am active in it. It was called the Transformational Leadership Council, and at a meeting in Aspen, Rhonda came, and only one or two people knew who she was, and she came as a guest, and she was filming. And so all of us went in for about an hour and a half. It was a 3-day meeting, and we were doing lots of other stuff. So it was time for people to be interviewed, and people got interviewed. And a lot of the people in the Transformational Leadership Council are into the law of attraction or manifestation. But I really wasn't. The Sedona Method helps with that, and I'll explain how. I'll come back to that. But what happened is she interviewed me for an hour and a half, and at the very end she went, oh, this movie is about the law of attraction, so I want you to be in the movie. We need to talk about it. And so I said a couple of things. One of them was be for what you want as opposed to against what you don't want. That's part of the Sedona Method. And she based a whole part of the movie on that, a whole part of the book on that. And there was one other quote, but the law of attraction for someone who's lost in victim consciousness is an amazingly great first step. Because you have to, sometimes if there's a problem, you take something that also could be a problem if it's believed 100%, and you use that to get rid of the first problem.
Hmm.
Uh, even some medicines, if just taken, you would never take them by themselves because they'd be toxic. And why get your body toxic? But this is similar. Getting lost in manifestation is toxic because then you're constantly trying to monitor how you think and feel, and you can feel actually more and more and more compressed. You tend to get into magical thinking because you think that you can just write down on a piece of paper and your world is going to magically change. And yes, of course, it's certainly better. It feels better to live life with a more positive mental attitude. But if you're not dealing with the underlying causes of that positive mental attitude, which are your suppressed emotions and your belief in being a separate individual, then you're just building a house in air. Or it's more like you have a golden barrel, and the golden barrel being beingness or just what's really true. And it's covered over by some rotting apples. And so what you're doing is you're putting a layer of good apples on top of the rotten apples, but eventually they're all going to rot. But if you clean out the rotten apples, what you discover is the barrel's already made of gold. And that's what you've been looking for, is the gold that's already there. So the law of attraction is very much supported by letting go because you're clearing out everything to the contrary. But then you don't need to force the opposite. It's what's already there. And again, and it's not really you doing any of that. It's just what's naturally happens. It's life is a beautiful unfolding that is not run by your sense of being a person. The sense of being a person is part of that beautiful unfoldment. But the person isn't as in charge as it thinks it is. And so what happens is, as you let go, you feel like you're being supported on so many levels without it being you who's doing it. It's just what's natural. And so again, the law of the law of attraction or manifestation is a great first step if you feel like you're the victim of the world. But once you recognize that you can affect the world, then you start to move beyond the whole manifestation thing into how can I just enjoy life as it is? How can I be how can I just be a good mom or a good dad or a good husband or wife or a good son or daughter or a good employee? And then even that drops away, and you just find that you're naturally in loving relationships. You're naturally naturally having the abundance that is already there. You're naturally living this beautiful life that, of course, still has ups and downs, but you're not crushed by any of them. They're just what's happening.
So can we get into an example of how this works?
Oh, let's definitely do that.
Because, I used to be a huge and I still I don't discount manifestation. I do believe there is a lot of warrant in manifestation. But the one thing that I found with the Sedona method is that you don't necessarily ignore the not so positive side, but you release it, right?
Yes.
It's about releasing.
That's a big difference.
Yes, yeah.
That's a big difference.
So it's a huge difference.
Yes. So and let me just address that since you brought it up. if I said anything so far that anyone's interpreting as deny your feelings or reject your feelings or suppress your feelings or pretend they're not there, that's not what I meant to do.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if you just simply open and allow and embrace what's being felt, then just in that it starts to dissipate. But then you can actually learn to just get out of the way and let it pass through more and more quickly, more and more easily, until it's just second nature. Just like it's second nature now to run when there's a crisis, or to just grin or frown and bear it, or to just feel like you're run over by the bus or being dragged behind the bus. You find that there are ups and downs still, but it feels less and less like it's happening to you. It's just what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very different. The less it feels like it's happening to you, the more it's just what's happening, the easier life feels,
Mm-hmm.
the more natural it is. And the more you find yourself saying, doing, being, allowing for whatever's most appropriate moment to moment. So let's start with just, the Sedona Method is a group of tools grouped under the term the Sedona Method. And one of the first tools that we introduce is just actually I should say there are 5 ways of letting go. The first, and let me demonstrate it so it's visual. Pick up a pen or a pencil or some object that you would be willing to drop.
Do you want me to do it too?
Sure, if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it with you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
But if everyone do this at home, if you're watching at home, if you're in a car or a place you can't do this, just imagine it. So this object in your hand represents your fear, your frustration, your anxiety, your self-doubt, your limiting thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And your hand represents just your gut or just what you truly are. So now grip the object really tightly with your hand. Now, if you did this long enough, it would start to get really uncomfortable and also start to feel familiar, because this is what we're doing all the time with our emotions without realizing it. That's enough.
Yeah.
Open your hand. Roll the object around in your hand. Now, is this object attached to your hand?
No, it's
Right,
not.
obviously
No.
not. It's not. But that's how it feels so often. We feel like there's no room between me and the emotion.
True.
We feel like we are it.
Yeah.
But every limiting thought, feeling, or belief is attached to us as this object is attached to your hand. And it's even in our language. We don't usually say, I feel sad. We say, I am sad.
Mm.
We don't usually say, I feel angry. We say, I am angry. I'm angry.
Yes.
Right. Well, it's not attached to us. And because of that, we can do this. Close your hand lightly around the object and just let it go. That's how easy it can be to let go. Now, that seems too good to be true or too simple, but that's why it works. Because it doesn't require a lot of thought. You didn't have to think a lot to open your hand and let the pen drop. Well, you don't have to think a lot to just simply open inside as best you can and let the feeling drop, because it's not attached. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. With this, you don't have to respond. Just listen.
Okay.
I don't want you to feel like I'm putting you on the spot. Plus, I want to do this with everyone who's listening or watching this so that they can do it with us, because they'll find that if they can just do this much, their lives will be radically transformed. Years ago, I did a seminar with Jack Canfield. It was his Breakthroughs to Success seminar. He used to have me come regularly as a guest to that. And for a few hours, he turned it over to me, and I talked about the Sedona Method, and then I took people through them. And the main tool I taught was only this: could you let it go, would you, and when, which I'm about to describe. And we used to send the DVD of that part of his seminar out as an introductory tool to get people interested in the Sedona Method. And we got cabinets full of benefits people got just from that introduction.
Oh, wonderful.
So this tool that I'm about to share with you, even though it's simple, if you explore it, you'll find it really helps. So the first thing we'll do is just focus on anything in life that we're not doing it yet. I'm just going to describe what we're going to do.
Okay.
What we're going to be doing. So the first is you just think of something in your life that you'd like to change or improve. The next thing is you just welcome or allow the feeling. Just let it be there. Notice it. The next thing is I'll ask you these 3 questions. The first one is, could you let it go? And if you were able to drop that pen or that pencil, or if you could even imagine doing it, then I know you can. And then the next question is would you let it go? And would you just means, are you willing to? And if you're ever not sure, you can ask yourself, would I rather hold on to this pain or suffering or problem? Or would I rather be free of it? Or rather have my goals? Usually the answer is obvious there. And the last question is when. And when is an invitation to decide to do it now. And when we go through these questions, it's so easy to let go that you might find that you let go a little on could you, a little on would you, and a little on when. Some people save it up. Because we've spent a whole life lost in our motion and clinging to it without realizing it. At first, you may not feel it as much as you'd like, but if you stick with this, you'll find it gets easier and easier to do. And the only suggestion I have is, one is just be honest with yourself. Yes or no are acceptable answers. And just respond spontaneously as best you can to the questions. And no, because yes or no don't matter really, you could just avoid debate as best you can. And again, lead with your heart as opposed to your head as best you can. But if the head wants to get in and figure it out a little, that's okay too. So now let's do the process. Now, by the way, you can do this with eyes open or eyes closed. Either way is fine. When you're first doing it, it might be easier with eyes closed, unless you're driving. Then, of course, don't do that.
Don't.
But one of the beauties of the Sedona Method is as you learn to do it, you'll find that you can do it just as easily with eyes open as with eyes closed. So let's do it together.
All right, let's do it.
So in this moment, could you just simply pause or stop and notice what is? Just do that as best you can. And then allow yourself to review your life and check to see if there's anything in your life that you're wanting to change or improve that there may be some feeling about. And if so, could you just simply welcome or allow or be present with the feeling as best you can? And then as best you can, just for now, could you let that feeling go? Just could you? Remember to avoid debate. Yes or no is fine. And then would you? When? Okay, now let's go through it a couple more times. You may have felt some letting go already, or you may not be sure, and that's natural. It's normal.
So is it normal to say no?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So if I said, no, I can't let it go. Nope, not now. Nope, nope, nope. That's normal.
No, I'm glad you said that. I some of the biggest releases I've seen when teaching this live is when people, they've been forcing themselves to say yes. And really they want to say no. So when they actually say no, it releases. Like even just now, when you admitted that you wanted, that the answer was no, and wasn't that a relief? Didn't you feel something let go?
Yeah, it felt good to say no. And it felt good to say not now. Nope, not now.
Yeah. All right. But that was a release.
Okay. Very cool.
Because it's not about how you respond. These questions, young children don't go, could I let it go? Would I? When?
No.
They just do it. There's
right.
no thought required.
Right.
So let's run through it again.
Okay.
Focus on that same thing or anything else that you're wanting to change or improve. And then could you just welcome or allow or be present with however you're feeling? Could you just let it be here as best you can? And then as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? Good. And let's just do that one more time. The repetition actually helps. Sometimes it takes a bunch of times asking the questions until it fully lets go. And that's okay. So again, focus on that same thing or anything else that you want to change or improve. And could you just welcome or allow however that feels inside? And then as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? Okay, good. So again, if you were doing this on your own, you could say, could I, would I, and when? And if there was a bunch of no's at first, you just keep going. And one of the other things you can do, if you keep hearing no, then take a moment and give yourself permission to hold on to the feeling. Because if it feels like the feeling is holding on to you, of course the answer is no. But if you realize that you're holding on to it and you give yourself permission to do that, then it feels more possible to actually choose to let it go.
That is okay. You can also use writing as well, right? Like you can write it down. Because I am a little bit of not a little bit. I love to write, and often I will do this method in the morning when I wake up, and just to kind of release anything that I don't need to carry with me through the day. That's how I've been doing it since I finished the book. And I find it really helps me. And you're going to laugh at this. So I have both the book and I have the Audible book. Yes. And sometimes if I have issues going back to sleep, sometimes I'll wake up at 5 and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to wake up this early. I will put on the Audible book. It is amazing because whoever narrated it, she's got this beautiful, soft voice, and it's almost like I'm absorbing it subliminally as I'm falling back asleep. Anyway, I just think that's kind of a cool way to use, because it's been months that I've been doing this now.
That's great. That's great. Yes, a lot of people like the Audible book, but excuse me. A lot of our programs are audio and video programs. And people find those very helpful because you can't always have someone ask you the questions. Although one of the things is we have a Facebook group and a page, and on our Facebook group, people partner with each other and they ask each other the questions.
Cool.
And they find that really, really, really supportive. There are thousands of people in our Facebook group, which is just the Sedona Method. And so what they found is that as they ask the questions, not someone asking them so that if they can release, as they're asking them, the other person to release, they actually release more. Sometimes when you're doing what you can to support someone else, it's incredibly beneficial to you too. And that's definitely true with releasing. So we encourage that. We encourage people to support each other in it. And so, however you learn the Sedona Method, you'll find that the more you apply it, the more benefit you receive.
Absolutely.
By the way, we also have free support calls that we do monthly.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool.
And if you go to Sedona.com, which is our website, there's a page for the support calls. And you can sign up for free to receive them. And you don't have to take one of our programs to do that. You don't have to read the book. You don't have to listen to the Audible. You can just sign up for free and get support every month.
I have a question for you. Have you ever heard of the book Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott?
Nope. Never heard of it.
She cited your work in the Sedona Method. And it takes on a little bit more of a darker side where she says you have to be okay with your fears and you have to release them. But they did cite your work. I guess she had to because that's how I first heard about the Sedona Method. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I want to go to the original. I want to go to the OG. Right? So that's how I got connected to that. And I found that was my step to get to this. And now this is kind of where I'm residing. Why is it called the Sedona Method?
Oh, years and years ago, the Sedona Method was actually called the mind freedom because it frees your mind. But this dates how long this has been around. I don't know if you ever heard of the Jonestown Massacre, where I think it was about 700 or 800 people committed mass suicide because they drank cyanide-laced Kool-Aid because the cult leader said they were all going to go to this higher plane. And when this happened, we decided to change the name to something innocuous because people can think mind freedom is hypnosis. This is actually the opposite of hypnosis. All of us are already hypnotized by our stories, by our beliefs, by what society tells us, by what our parents told us, by the limiting thoughts and feelings we've told ourselves. That it's become, we're totally lost and hypnotized by it. And so this does the exact opposite. It dehypnotizes us. But at the time that the first courses were held in Sedona, Arizona in the early 70s, a few years before I got involved. And and at the time, Sedona hadn't been discovered, so it didn't have a woo-woo air to it. There was no vortexes. There was none of that.
Right.
It was just a beautiful place, peaceful place. It hadn't been discovered, so it wasn't very crowded. And so we named it the Sedona Method because it had to do with its roots, and that's where it was first taught. And also it shows you how to feel as good as you would in a beautiful place like Sedona, Arizona, in the middle of traffic, in the middle of life's crises. And the name stuck.
I like it. I also happen to like Sedona, and I'm okay with the woo. I'm okay with all of it.
Right, right. Well, not everyone is,
Yeah.
and but again, there's nothing woo woo about the Sedona method. It's very practical.
Yeah.
It's used by psychologists and psychiatrists all over the world. Some of them won't even work with people unless uh, they know the Sedona method or they're willing to learn it, because then they can make the kind of progress that would take years to in days, weeks, or months, as opposed to constantly recycling the same story over and over again. Because when you share something, again, why do you think we like telling our friends what's going on and talking about our problems? It's because when you express it, there is some relief in that, but it's not the same as actually letting it go.
No.
It's helpful. I highly encourage it. And in fact, you can't have a healthy relationship unless you're sharing what's going on with you. It just won't happen. But for most people, it's not enough. When you truly letting go, you can still share what's going on with you, but you don't need to, because there's just this natural happiness and peace and love that's flowing through the body-mind mechanism effortlessly. And so you can just enjoy sharing what's going on, as opposed to, if I don't have someone that tells about this, I'm going to explode, or I'm going to crash and burn. You don't have to worry about the explosions and the crashing and burning, but you can still, of course, tell your friends what's going on if you want to.
Yeah.
But it won't be like it is now when you're hanging out with friends. Sometimes now, what we're doing is we're waiting for them to finish their story so we can share ours. We're not really fully listening.
Right.
But what you'll find is, as you let go, people will think you're a brilliant conversationalist, even though you're speaking less. It's just because you can actually listen. You're not dying to get your story out too.
Wow, that's so powerful, actually, when you think about it. And so I personally, I like, people will probably say, well, I don't need this. I personally find this very useful for anybody who's a bit of an overthinker. I'm an overthinker and an overanalyzer. And I needed something like this because I was in my head all the time and constantly circling. And it's a good thing my husband's nothing like me. And he's like, why are you even thinking about that? He naturally lets everything go, right? And it's just natural to him. But I can't leave this conversation without you, because there's so much more to this. I mean, we can't even possibly get it all in about an hour. But can you just quickly describe what the cleanup method is?
Oh, sure. Well, what that is it's a procedure that takes, I don't know, can take about 10 minutes to go through. But there's some learning required before I can take someone through it, so I can't really just do it on the air. But what it is the cleanup procedure was designed for the people who were teaching this to other people. Because when you teach this, it will stir up everything inside of you. And if you're not letting go, you're not going to want to keep doing this.
Right.
Because again, when you talk to someone who's angry, if you have any anger inside of you, it comes up inside of you. If you talk to someone who's fearful, their fear resonates with your fear and it comes up. And it can be disturbing. And so this procedure was created so that people helping others with releasing could, after the fact, clean it all up so they wouldn't be carrying it around with them, so they could just go back and be with this person again from a place of neutrality, from a place of full support. But the procedure itself is something you can use on all relationships. You can use it even on inanimate objects. I just did a course called the Money Course. And on that course, one of the things that we did is we did this procedure on money. And after we were done, people felt like they had a totally different, more positive relationship with money. And so, unfortunately, there are too many steps, and it's a little too complex
Sure.
to do in an interview. But that's what it is. It's a tool that you can use on your own. This is not just one. The letting go is something you can be doing throughout the day. This is something you need to take time out to do. It can take much more than 10 minutes to really go through it. But once you do it, the results are profound.
I find it to be very useful, even like you were saying, let's say your spouse comes home and he's all angry and he's all upset over something. I see it almost like an energetic entanglement,
Yes, that's how it feels.
Yeah, it feels that way. And I know it's in the book, and I found it to be very useful myself just for my day to day.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. So we have hit an hour. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention, Hale?
Just a few summary things.
Okay,
So that people can have something to take away from them.
Yeah.
So the first thing is just simply remember that feelings and thoughts are just feelings and thoughts. They're not you, and you can let them go. It's so often we feel like we are our thoughts and feelings, and because we feel like we are them, we don't realize that we can just simply let them go. So that's very simple, and it seems too simple to really make a difference. But if you just hang out with just pondering that, things start to shift. You'll find yourself naturally letting go, because it is natural to do this. The second thing is whatever's happening, all our sense of limitation is imagined. It's not as real as it seems. And you and what really is already wholeness, is already perfection, is already fullness. It's already freedom. Except we miss it because we're lost in our dramas. We miss it because we're lost in a thought or a feeling or belief. We miss it because we think that I'm separate from this one energy that all is. And as you stay open to that, at least as a possibility, you can recognize that this is already fullness, is already wholeness. And as that's recognized, things shift profoundly for the better. And also, when there's an inevitable problems, which that's just what happens in life, because there's at least this openness that this too is wholeness. It's wholeness appearing as a problem. It's wholeness appearing as anger, or wholeness appearing as grief, or it's appearing as a struggle with money. Whatever it is, just that little tweak there changes the dynamic. And so just be open to that, at least as a possibility.
Mm.
And so just those two things will be very transformative if you just ponder them. And I encourage people to explore this. There's plenty of free resources online. We have over 200 videos on our YouTube channel that it's all free. And it takes you through the process of letting go. And that's also just the Sedona Method, like the Sedona, like the city. And then we have all sorts of free resources on our website, sedona.com, sedona.com. And then, of course, there's the book, which is available where books are sold, but it's available on Amazon. So however you choose to pursue this, you'll find it will benefit you. But even if you don't, just remembering what we talked about and pondering a little, you'll find things get a little easier and maybe a lot easier.
I love that. Thank you so much. I loved our conversation, and it was such a pleasure to meet you, Hale.
Oh, likewise. Likewise. This was fun.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.